I'm Keith Wooden, and welcome to Story Mosaics. Hey, I have an opportunity to sit down with a friend of mine and a guy I have coffee with regularly. And as many times as I've sat down with you, RJ, I had never heard your full story. And then last time we're sitting there and over a bit of coffee, and you start sharing with me and unfolding a story of some incidents in your life. And man, it was such a great opportunity, something that people can identify so readily with. And so I want to introduce you to RJ and thank him for being here. Thanks, RJ, for joining us this morning on Story Mosaics.
Hey, Keith, it's an honor to be here with you, my friend.
Hey, and one of the things that I'm going to let the audience know and kind of pin this around is a phrase that one of my friends, one of my mentors, and a fellow elders from several years ago shared with me that was really something I could hang my hat on. He used to tell me this. He'd say, "Don't question in the dark what God has revealed to you in the light." And
Right.
and man, it made so much sense to me because there's so many dark moments in our lives, or things that we didn't anticipate, that make us wonder, okay, God, knock, 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 are you still there? Or did I really hear you right? Or
Right.
this
Right.
direction that I felt so compelled to go in, was that really what you were saying to me? And that was kind of one of your moments from not too many years ago.
Right.
And I thought, yeah, this is something that our audience needs to hear and be reminded of. And I may repeat that phrase several times because there are a couple of moments where you go, "Hey, this is a dark moment." So,
Yeah,
take me back, RJ. You were living in Alabama. You're Alabama born and raised, right?
that's correct. Yes. Alabama, born and raised, spent about 6 years in Louisiana. But other than that, I was born in South Alabama on the Georgia line, grew up there, moved back to the same place after living in Louisiana for 6 years, finished out, grade school, high school in Alabama,
Wow.
went to college at Auburn University. That's where I met my wife. And yeah, from there, just moved from Auburn, moved to Birmingham, and spent 12 years in Birmingham in the marketplace before moving to the Indianapolis area to start working at a church here locally in Fishers, Indiana.
So help me out. How did you escape the Southern accent? Because I mean, Alabama, especially Birmingham, usually has a pretty thick accent. And what are you doing speaking Midwest?
Yes. So I've been told that my accent has diluted quite a bit since moving here.
Okay.
I think it comes from now that I just focus on enunciating.
Uh,
That seems to go a long way to removing the accent. But
oh my goodness.
I've
That
been
that
back home, Keith. I've been back home to visit family, and they'll tell me that I sound like a Yankee now.
Oh, but that's not a compliment, by the way.
I didn't take it as such, but we still love them.
Well, you're doing great. But one thing you kind of hold on to, RJ, and one of the things that cracks me up is I know I have gray hair and everything, dude, but he always refers to me as sir, sir, sir. And I know that's part of your upbringing as well, isn't it?
Very much,
That's
very
great.
much.
I wish it was more of our culture today. That would be one thing that I wish we could borrow from the South and get back the ma'am and sir. And you'll be
Right.
happy to hear that my wife's favorite movies are still from the South. So
That's great.
she loves her roots down there. But you talked about your job and
Mhm.
really the heart and soul of what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how God directed you, how you were hearing God's voice, and what that meant to you. Let's
Right.
start. Let's roll back the clock then to Alabama. You say you were in the marketplace, but you were also working in a church there. Help me understand that marketplace and that church alignment in your life, and where were you at there?
Yeah, absolutely, Keith. So after college, we moved to Birmingham, and I started working for BMW,
Ah,
and really enjoyed that. Was spent 10 years at with the BMW Group at a car dealership. And had a myriad of different roles and responsibilities during that decade there. And what was interesting is that when we moved to Birmingham, we had a church home kind of right away. There was a church there that a lot of the friends that I had made in Auburn uh, in college, we all kind of ended up at the same church. And so we were there for maybe 2 years into our time in Birmingham. And then the church uh, kind of just fell apart through some
Mm,
unfortunate situations.
wow.
And then we were kind of, churchless. We didn't have a church home for maybe a year or so. But there was this church that was right next door, uh, about a mile from where I was working in Birmingham, and that church was called Church of the Highlands in Birmingham. And I didn't know it at the time that it was somewhat of a well-known church even outside of the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
But I knew it was, equal distance from where we lived and where I worked. And so my wife and I just decided we would go check this place out. And they went to the central location, the main campus, and really fell in love with the message, the worship, the way we were treated, and said, you know what, we could maybe see ourselves planting some roots here.
Wow. Right away you felt that kindredship with the body that was there, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. I had never gone into a location and felt so welcomed, invited. It had a warm atmosphere. I felt comfortable there. And really, one of the things that happened for me was that our first Sunday there during worship, the first couple of songs that they played, I didn't know, but
Mm.
I could read the words on the screen. I was singing along, but I didn't have a tie to it. I hadn't heard them before. But then they played a song that I really listened to a lot in college for the next song, and it turned out it was just kind of a moment that I had that I was like,
Yes.
I kind of felt, that God was saying, "This is for you. I want you to feel like you belong." That I knew you were coming to this
I
location,
love it. I love it.
it's that song, our God is an awesome God. And I just remember thinking, wow, okay, I really felt touched in that moment. And so we continued to come back, and then we had our first child, and we took her to the children's church area, the Highlands Kids area, and they treated her amazingly well, but it was just a zoo because there was so many kids there, Keith. And what ended up happening is we ended up going to a smaller one of their satellite campuses
Yes.
that was just a few miles down the road, and really just fell in love with the people at that particular campus, and spent the rest of our time when we were in Alabama at that campus just pouring into um, anything and everything that we could. So my wife was on the prayer team. She served
Wow.
in the pastoral care ministry. She led women's small groups. I was involved with men's ministry there and men's small groups, and just had a blast serving and just pouring our lives into that place. And we honestly received so much more back than we gave out, I feel, in that season. And yeah, it was where I cut my teeth in ministry, and wouldn't have uh, without the time we spent there, would not be where we're at today.
You talk about something that's very, very important. And though we're not talking about church necessarily, we're talking about giftedness. And when you said we got back even more than we were pouring out, that is an excellent signal or a sign that you're working within your giftedness.
Mm, yeah,
If you're tired at the end, physically tired, that's maybe good. Sometimes even emotionally tired, but you feel
sure.
like, wow, you got something back from that. um,
Yeah.
and I just happened to be at the doctor's office yesterday, and this my nurse followed me down the hallway and out into the lobby and said, "Can I ask you a question?" And she must have picked up something from the doc or something, and she
Mm,
said, um, I've been reading a lot about near-death experiences, and you seem like the person that might understand some of that. Would you talk to me? And I'm going, what happened here? But when I walked out of that place, I felt like, yeah, this is, given my ministry background, I could speak and
Right.
give her insight, talk about discernment, talk about some of the dangers of being caught up in some things. And
Yeah,
at the end of the day, I walk out and I feel like I'm energized. And you talk about being energized even though you were pouring into people. So um
absolutely.
well, that's cool, so cool. And Church of the Highlands is one of those churches that is a unique church in that they are well known, but they're well known not because of they're pointing to themselves, but they are actually pointing out, and they're an
Right.
amazing organization. In
Yeah.
fact, one of the interesting things is there are a lot of churches that are known first and foremost by their pastor. You think of some churches, you think of the name of the pastor,
Right.
but Church of the Highlands, though they have a great pastor, that's not their moniker, that's not their ID. Their
Right.
idea
Absolutely.
is something far different. So, enough of that. So did you end up getting involved in ministry, not now professionally there at Church of the Highlands as well?
Not professionally. Nope.
Okay.
No, it was never, there was never a vocational time in ministry at Church of the Highlands. It was just a leadership role, serving as a volunteer, or as they called it, I was a part of the dream team there at Church of the Highlands. So serving as a small group leader, and then a small groups coach, and then eventually led a group of men who led all the men's small group leaders at our campus. And
Wow.
so that
Okay.
was the area that I spent the most time in while at Church of the Highlands. And honestly, just had as much fun as I've ever had doing anything in ministry. Was just building a great culture with a group of guys that were on fire for helping men get connected, discover purpose, and make a difference. And it was, yeah, honestly, it's one of the most touching moments and seasons of my life was being a part of that. I'll never forget when we had decided to move from Alabama to Indiana to pursue a vocational job in ministry here. That um, like saying bye to that group of men was one of the toughest things I'd ever done, because we had
Wow.
built something that uh, hadn't been built before. We had been involved in lots of opportunities. We had served a lot of other people together. There was blood, sweat, and tears, but it was all so fulfilling. Um, and I'll say this: one of the things that we were kind of taught, like you talked about being tired, and maybe even maybe experiencing some areas of burnout at times, is, I had kind of found my spot in that season where fruitfulness and fulfillment were matching together.
Wow.
And so um, I can honestly say I grew so much during those years in serving, and I was exhausted, maybe physically and emotionally at
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
but in terms of fulfillment, purpose, knowing that I was in the right spot, I never spiritually was exhausted. I never felt like I was um, on the edge of anything other than on the edge of what God had next for me.
That's fantastic, RJ, and I really appreciate that because there's some teaching time going along with what we're talking about in terms of some big picture items as well. But
Yeah,
so there was this moment though, or this a season where you started recognizing God was calling you into ministry,
yeah,
but that calling may take you anywhere in the United States, and so
right.
you got kind of teamed up with a group of people that were looking for something, some of the gifts that you had, where you felt like that up here in Indianapolis. So tell me about that calling and tell me about that trip up to Indianapolis. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So as my wife and I were looking at, what's next. While I was in the marketplace and working, I had this started to develop this holy discontent with where I was
Yeah.
at BMW. The people were great, but I just felt like something was missing. Um, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I went and talked to my campus pastor at the time, and he just shared, you know what, I think God's calling you to take a next step, and so you should consider and really pray about vocational ministry as a next step. And so I did that, and over the course of a couple of years, going through Bible college there in Alabama, and just being prepared and equipped, really started to consider what would it be like to open ourselves up to not
Yeah.
being in Alabama.
Wow.
Um, and it wasn't easy by any stretch. It was kind of a, whoa, are we really going to consider what it would be like to not be in the South? My wife was born in Mobile, Alabama, had lived in Atlanta, Georgia for most of her life. We were both met at college in Alabama and had lived there, for at that time, 10 years or so in Birmingham at that moment. And so we were like, well, what are we going to wait to see if there's an opportunity at Church of the Highlands, or are we actually open to what God might have for us outside of there? And so we really started praying about it, started like putting it, you know, up into the Lord, just saying, hey, we're open. We do have one request though. This was really the only earthly request, Keith, that we said, please, if you don't keep us in Alabama, whatever you do, don't send us anywhere hotter than Alabama. I'm being as serious as I can be. We
Oh,
were,
I understand.
it's 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 not easy in the South from about late April till mid October.
Oh,
It's super humid, super hot, and we had kind of had enough of that. And so we said, okay, Lord, maybe send us somewhere that has all four seasons. Uh,
that's so fun. That's so fun.
yes. And so what we did is um, started really reaching out to the people at the college I was at that have a lot of connections in ministry. And I shared, here's where I feel like God's leading me in a vocational role, small groups, developing leaders, maybe there's some opportunities to help build a volunteer team at a church. Do you know of any churches that are looking for that sort of skill set, that sort of heart? Would you maybe put out some feelers or at least advise me on who to reach out to? And they said, yeah, there's a couple of churches um, up north. So there was a church just kind of outside of Chicago, and then there was a church here in the Indianapolis area. Well, being from a very small town, I graduated high school with 13 people.
Oh my goodness, man.
Yeah. So I'm from a tiny town. The idea of being anywhere near Chicago was really not on my radar. I did not like that. But I said, Indianapolis, huh? You know what? Let's start there. And so I drove. I came and visited church in Indianapolis, and it was in April, and came by myself the first time, and visited this church. And man, it snowed on us while we were here. And I just was like, you know what? This might be a sign. You know what? That this might be the promised land because it's April and it's snow on the ground. And so I got connected to this church, went and visited, went to their services. I had to call an Uber to get to the church because I was not going to drive in the snow, uh, in a rental car from the airport. And just had a blast. Had a blast. Went home, told my wife, I said, there could be something there in Indiana for us. So we kept putting it to prayer, and one thing led to another, and that church, kind of invited us back as a family to come visit, and talk about what it would like to come on staff at that church.
Wow.
Yeah,
So you come up here as a family, and your wife is on board. The kids don't really know, but there's snow,
that's
and,
right. They've
and
heard that there's snow.
they've
Yes.
heard there is snow, and though you could not bring any back with you, uh,
No,
at least you had an opportunity. So you come up to Indianapolis, and some things take place here that must have been very, very, very confusing. Walk me through what took place there, because your wife is bought in and really encouraging in this whole process as well, and you're trying to convey what you've learned as well. So help us understand what took place there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we drive up. At the time, it took us about 9 hours with our youngest son in the car. He was 8 months old, so we drove up uh, on a Friday. We get in Friday afternoon, Friday evening. The next day, uh, go to Saturday morning prayer and experience that. Enjoy that moment. Come back Saturday evening. Get to meet the host couple that's going to host us for the weekend. Enjoy getting to know them, and uh, in between the first Saturday service and the second Saturday service, we get a chance to sit down with the lead pastor and his wife at the church, and we had connected with them on my first trip, and we connected with them back in Alabama when they were there for a conference, and had established somewhat of a relationship, and had felt like we had connected well. And during the conversation, as we're in between services, we're back in their office, and he just says, okay, so what do you see yourself doing here at the church? And I said, I really have a passion for small groups. I love developing small group leaders. I love launching groups. I love helping people see that they have a talent and a gift for pastoring people in small circles versus in large rooms. And I wanted to say,
Way
hey,
to go.
you know what? Yeah, the best ministry actually takes place between Sundays, is what I said. And he said, you know what? That's really great. We're not very good at small groups, but we actually just hired a guy to come be our small groups director from the same church that I was a part of.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. And so, as you can imagine, in the moment that we're hearing that, we believe we're coming up here to have a conversation about joining their team in this small groups area. But what actually happened, they had already hired a person and hadn't communicated that to my wife and I. And so in that moment, I'm trying to keep my face from looking so confused. And he actually shared the name of the person they had hired, and I knew that individual. And so in that moment, I did the only thing that I had been kind of trained to do, which is just to honor and to say, well, that guy is an amazing guy. He's going to do a great job for you in that area. Well, that was kind of the end of the conversation because they had to get ready for the next service. So our host couple, you know, ex, escorted us out and got us to the car. We were going to go grab some dinner, and get ready for Sunday. And as we're walking out, I'm in shock. My wife is in shock. In fact, she asked me, she said, "Did you know about this?" Just out of a bewilderment moment, so to speak, just out of a moment of real confusion. And I just told her, I said, honey, if I had known about this, we wouldn't have driven up here. I am as surprised and caught off guard as you are.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it was a really intense, confusing, what in the world just happened moment.
So you're in a state of confusion, but your wife is even in more of a state of confusion in one sense, because she was kind of playing off of what she had heard from you, and
Right.
you've just spent 9 hours in the car, and I, I've got to tell you, I've traveled with little ones. Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
you've been through purgatory already. Okay,
Yes.
yes,
Yes, it
yes,
felt that way.
it felt that way. Um, I mean, that evening had to be so hard.
It was. It was. It was a really tough night, really tough evening. Um, I mean, essentially, what happened? We went and got some food, took it back to the hotel room, and we just kind of sat down, and we were just like, "Okay, what are we doing here? Okay, all right, what are we doing here?" And I just remember that our son was 8 months old. I would my wife was like, "Okay, I'm going to bed. I need to get some rest." I said, "No problem." I'll take, give me our son, and I'll just hold him until he goes to sleep. And Keith, I just remember, I'll never forget where we were, like where I sat in that room from about 9 o'clock till probably maybe 2 in the morning, just holding my son. He was asleep, and you know that once you get a baby asleep, it's you have to decide, is it worth
Yeah, that's right.
risking him waking up to try to get in the bed? And I just remember holding him for hours and hours and hours, and the whole time I'm sitting there thinking and praying and talking to the Lord, and I'm just like, okay, what in the world is going on, Lord? I felt I heard you clearly that we were supposed to come here. Did I miss something? Where did I miss you? Did I was I listening to myself? Did I try to force this to happen? Um, and he was so kind to us, Keith. He just said, "Trust me. This is this is not the end of the story." And I just remember going to bed probably about 2:30, just thinking, I don't have a clue what tomorrow is going to hold. I don't have a clue as to what we're really doing here, but we're here and God's with us. And I was just reminded that He's not caught off guard.
Wow, thank you for that
Yeah,
phrase there. And
yeah,
I'm going to come back to that phrase of my mentor, my friend who said, "Don't question in the dark," because that was not
yeah,
only a physically dark moment, and we know how when the sun goes down and the darkness comes, it can usher in a darkness of the heart as well. So
sure.
you had the darkness. Don't question in the dark what God has revealed to you in the light. And He's
Yeah,
revealed to you, I'm calling you, I'm ready to use you, I'm moving in your life.
yeah,
Wow, RJ, and I know your personality enough to know that um you feel things deeply. you're
hmm,
very you're very intuitive about the feelings and the emotions of others, especially, I've heard you speak with such honor for your wife and such
yeah.
a esteem of her,
Oh man,
and you knew her heart was breaking too.
yeah.
And it must have just been a weight on your shoulders.
Oh, it certainly was, because as a husband and a father and provider and all the hats that I feel like I was wearing and still wear to this day, um, as a husband, as a dad, provider, all that for my family, I felt responsible for this moment. Like I felt responsible for the confusion, the pain, the uncertainty, the all of the feelings that would be bottled up all right then. Like I was carrying that weight uh, in those moments, and so yeah, so I didn't want her to feel like that she had to carry any of that. Like, hey, let me, I'll shoulder this moment and say, and really just put it on my back. And let's see what happens tomorrow. So we woke up, started getting ready, just kind of talking it out in the morning. Like, okay, let's just see what happens here. Trying to remain positive, trying to, just not, let's see what God does. Let's be open-minded here. Maybe there's something else here that we weren't expecting and that we had no vision for in the moment. So we went to Sunday service, and met up with the host couple again, and we were went to one of the services, came back, got our son from uh, the children's ministry there at the church, and just never had any sort of feeling that there was any open doors at this particular church. And
Wow.
one of the things that I was reminded of is that oftentimes people pray, Lord, open the doors only you can open, and close the doors that wouldn't want us to step through. right?
Yeah.
And so don't allow us to walk through any doors or step into any opportunities that where you're not going to be there, you're not leading us to. And I
That's
had
right.
to be I was reminded in that moment that we had prayed that prayer, Lord, please, open your doors, your opportunities. Don't allow us to go into any place where you're not calling us to, that you're not calling us to. And it's crazy. He answered that prayer, but he answered it in a way that was far different than
Yeah.
we could have ever imagined. So, oftentimes, and now that I'm in vocational ministry and now I work with people all the time, I have to remind people, hey, God, God answers all prayers. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's, you know, no, but oftentimes I think he answers, and this is the one that's I think a bit tougher, is because it has to deal with our patience and our waiting. But
Right.
he answers prayers with, "I have something better."
Wait, just wait
Yeah,
and
just
see.
wait.
And it's so tempting sometimes to lower our shoulder, especially as leaders and as men, to lower our shoulders. And we can push this door down. We can make
Yeah,
something
right.
happen.
Yep,
And when we do, we inevitably, God will say, you know what? If you're going to be really stubborn, I'm going to let you push the door down. But I
right.
have something. Be patient. Wait. Um, RJ, that must have been a critical moment. So you end up going back down to Alabama, long drive home. You thought the drive up was long.
Right. Yeah,
there's
we sure did. We thought it was long.
there's a
Yeah,
lot of silent moments between you and your wife on the way home, I imagine, or and filled only with the cries of someone in the back seat
yeah,
demanding a little bit of attention. And oh man,
yeah,
so you get back to Bama and you're just kind of wrestling through. I'm gonna fast forward just a tiny
yeah,
bit just to say, okay, so you press the hold button in terms of that ministry. You recognize
yep,
these doors are closed.
that's right.
Um,
Yep,
but what's the timetable as you or what's happening in the next few weeks, months? I'm not sure the exact
yeah,
time frame, but
sure.
what's taking place in your conversations? Do you still recognize the call of God on your life in these areas? Help me
Right.
understand that a little bit, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So what ends up happening is, we get back to Alabama. Immediately, the first thing I do is I go connect with our campus pastor because I want to unpack this
Way to go.
experience
Good, good.
in a with healthy accountability, and not rely on my own feelings. I'm a human, so I'm having feelings about this whole experience, and I don't want to let those feelings be the master of the situation. I want to unpack this in a healthy place. So I immediately go to our campus pastor and just share exactly what happened. And he said, "Well, okay, clearly that's not the spot for you guys. So let's just let's keep our conversation with God. Like let's make sure we're still having daily time. Let's not abandon anything. Let's make sure we're still on point, on track, and keep doing the basics." So
Yep, yep.
he just encouraged me. All right, God's still with you. Stick with Him. Don't run.
There you go.
This does not need to impact your relationship with Him at all. In fact, uh, if you run closer to Him, you never know what He's going to open up next. And I had just committed in my heart that, and I remember sending out a group text to uh, all the men I was leading with on our men's hub. Hey guys, the trip didn't go as expected. Appreciate your prayers. We're back here in Alabama now. I'm more ready than ever to continue to pour in to the men of our church. And that I really felt, oh, you know what?
Yeah.
Maybe it's more time in the marketplace. Maybe it's more time to just be prepared. And my campus pastor just said, you know what? You have to be okay if God chooses to not open a door for vocational
Wow.
ministry, because that might not be the thing. We just don't know. We're just going to trust that his plan and his timing is going to be perfect. I said, you know what? His name's Pastor Charles Kelly. I said, you know what, Pastor Charles, I'm on board. Let's keep serving our campus. And so
Yeah.
we just got back to work, and yeah, and was just focused on continuing to build what we had already built on at the Greystone campus at Church of the Highlands.
I think this is so important, RJ. Just to reiterate what you said there is it's not a time to rein in, fall back, get bitter, wag the finger at God. I thought you said, you showed me all those kind of things. It's just a time to go back to the fundamentals.
Right.
Make sure your fundamentals of prayer and studying God's word. I don't know how many times I had to go back to the Lord in my calling, and my Bible was on a shelf right above my bed, and I would grab the scriptures and I say, "Are you sure, God?" Because I went through a Christian Bible college, a Christian college. I went through an outstanding college, um, outstanding seminary, and I had never even been asked to teach a Sunday school class, not even for fifth grade boys, and
Right.
I'd reach
Right.
up there and I'd say, God, are you sure?
Yeah.
Because this is tough. This is tough. And I'd bring that back. And when I got back to those fundamentals of his word and prayer, I would feel the reiteration of that call, because that was the light he could shine the light on. And so God starts to
Right.
shine the light again and continuously on this calling. And I'm just amazed because this next step is what's astounding. What took place here?
Yeah.
What happens in this next step? Because it's so fun, RJ.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say that, after that moment, after getting back to Alabama and kind of just, resigning ourselves to living in the hot South for forever, um, we're, but, in my heart of hearts, I'm happy to do it. Um,
Yeah, I hear you.
yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, we had kind of fallen in love with the Fishers area when we were up here visiting. As a my first time my wife had been here, and we just kind of fell in love with it. So we were kind of missing it, and I
Wow.
was like, you know what, that's okay. Well, you know what, there's still purpose here in Alabama. We're still going to serve. So we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to learn as best we can, and I think somewhat recover in a way, recover from that experience and just take the time to allow God to download some things and how can we use this moving forward. But I just decided, you know what, we're just going to keep on being here in Alabama. And about 3 weeks later, I get an email from another church here in the Fishers area called Heartland Church. And what's funny is I knew exactly where Heartland Church was, because when I had visited on my own that time I came to Indiana the first time, and when it snowed, I stayed at the hotel
Oh my
that was
goodness.
right beside Heartland Church when the main campus was on 96th Street.
Oh my goodness. I did
And
not
so the
know this.
yes, so the executive pastor at the time reached out and say, hey, I'm the executive pastor with Heartland Church. We heard you just were here visiting the area and kind of fell in love with the area. Would you consider coming up and visiting Heartland? And so they essentially, what happened is that he had reached out to the placement director of Highlands College there at Church of the Highlands, and I had shared with him our experience and how much we had fallen in love with the Midwest. And he then shared with this is executive pastor at the time that, hey, you should reach out to this guy, meaning me. And so we hopped on a phone call, and I said, we absolutely fell in love with the area. We know that's a great place to raise a family. And but I got to tell you, uh, from my
Wow.
experience and what we just went through with this other church, we're a little gun shy, so to speak. We're still kind of processing what all happened. And he said, well, would you be willing to come give Heartland a visit? I said, well, here's what I'll do. I'll come. I'll come visit. My wife's not coming back up there anytime soon. We just drove up there with a screaming
Oh,
kid,
oh my
and
goodness.
she's not ready to do that again, but I will come visit. And one of the things that happened from there was he said, "That's fine. Can you be here on this date?" So I talked to my wife. I said, "All right, there's this other church in the Fishers area that's asking us to come visit. So I'm going to go up there and see what it's about." She said, "You go, and see what it's all about, and then you let me know what you think." And I just really appreciated her openness at that moment to say, "Okay, um, maybe there is another door open," but also at the time having no expectations that this was we had already been up here once, so I didn't have any expectations that this was going to be the place we would end up. It was just the next step that God confirmed that you need to go visit this place.
You
And
know,
so,
I love that, RJ, with regard to first of all, her real and raw emotions in this. I can't make that trip. I can't invest my heart again right now. At the same time, you
right,
guys recognizing, but God has not brought us this far in this
right,
process to not complete what He has for us,
right.
and um, that was just a beautiful, beautiful moment in your lives,
Yeah.
and to recognize, okay, Lord, I'm surrendering to that. Was your experience a bit like what you experienced when you first went down to Church of the Highlands? Was it similar in Heartland?
Yeah, actually, it was very similar. So I meet up with the executive pastor, and I go to meet him at Saturday morning prayer, and then come back for Saturday night service, and just the atmosphere was just amazing. People were so welcoming. I got to see such a diverse congregation, which is something that, honestly, I don't know that I told you this over coffee last time, Pastor Keith. One of the reasons that we were considering, you know, opening ourselves up to God sending us somewhere else other than Alabama was that we wanted our kids to experience what it would be like to be in a diverse place,
Community.
a
Yep.
diverse community. My wife growing up in Atlanta, I graduated with 13 people. She had over 700 kids at her high school. And so she had experienced diversity and a diverse community growing up and being a part of such a large community, a large school. And I hadn't really experienced that, but we wanted that for our kids. So the area that we were living in Birmingham was not diverse at all. And here I walk into this church, Heartland Church, and there is just this amazingly diverse congregation. Everybody is so warm, welcoming. It felt like being back at Church of the Highlands, but it was also so very different at the same time. It was eye-opening to see that how in the world are all these people that are so different, so diverse, so unified, so on fire, so joyful all at the same time. And then I got to meet the senior pastor, Pastor Darren Shesky, and learn more about his story. And just really said, you know what? There could be something here. So I had a great, great visit, flew back home, went home and told Emily, I said, this is a very different experience than the one we had prior. And I just laid out, we've been praying about and talking about really wanting our kids to have a diverse community. There's one already established, and
Yes.
we're being
Wow.
invited. We're
Wow.
being
That's
invited.
awesome.
We're being invited into it. We're not having to go create it ourselves. We're being invited into this diverse community, this diverse congregation that loves each other already.
You
And
know,
that was so amazing.
RJ, I have to tell you, we visited Heartland on a very first occasion, and I walked out. The worship had been outstanding. Darren had spoken; it would have been outstanding. But I walked out in the foyer and I was greeting him, and I said, "There's only one reason that I would return to this church, It's not because of great preaching, because great preaching I can find in a lot of different places.
Right.
It's not because of great worship. I can find great worship in a lot of different places, but I cannot find a community that
Yeah.
is diverse ethnically, racially,
Right.
spiritually, young to old. There wasn't just a
Right.
young church. It wasn't an old church. There was just, I cannot find anything
Right.
like this
Yep.
microcosm anywhere else. This
Right.
is why I would return to this church. And it was so interesting to sense, that that was his heartbeat as well.
Yeah.
He loves
Absolutely.
communicating God's word, but it's all about being a microcosm of what heaven's going to look like. So
That's right.
it was,
Absolutely.
yeah. RJ, this is, and so you end up at Heartland then, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and
Absolutely.
and the neat thing is your journey wasn't over. And unfortunately, I'm the clock watcher too. Okay, so I'm
Yeah.
responsible for that, and we won't be able to get into this. But you know what? Your journey wasn't even over, even within Heartland, because Heartland had a commitment to making sure that you were in the right place on the bus. You were already on the bus. You got the job. You came in, but
Right.
there were some areas where they said, you know what? We think your gifts are more in and shaping that. And I have to tell you, RJ, one of the things that I have seen and I have witnessed is
Mhm.
um, the commitment that the organization, the church body made to you, but
Absolutely.
also how God anointed you with gifts that you were maybe not even completely aware of,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and how He was going to be using you in some
Right.
particular ways. And um, whenever I get the opportunity just to see you in the foyer or something like that, one of the most moving things is to watch you connecting with people,
Mm.
and
Wow.
that's certainly what God has called you to. So, RJ, I want to thank you for not questioning in the dark what God had given you in the light,
Sure.
and for you stepping through this. There's some people out here that are listening that are at a tipping point.
Mm.
They
Yeah.
are at that moment where they're saying, okay, is vocational ministry the right place for me? What's God asking me to do on next steps? And I always talk about the Christian walk is going from distant to dedicated, and yet
Mm. Yeah.
in that pathway of distant to dedicated, there are many, 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 many steps,
There are.
and every one of us is always on the crux, right at the edge of taking the next step. And you've
Right.
certainly exposed us to that opportunity to take the next right step in following Christ. And so, RJ, thank you so much for coming on Story Mosaics, and thank you for joining
Absolutely.
us on Story Mosaics.